Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Tech Can't Save Us podcast by Literal Humans. As always, I am one of your co-hosts, Paul David, CEO and co-founder of Literal Humans, and
Will Gadsby Pete here. Great to be joining you as a dynamic duo for another podcast.
We're very excited to be joined today by one of our compatriots in the agency world and the world of growth, Arjay, CEO of HomeRoom. Welcome, Arjay.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be here.
And we were connected through one of our clients, Nicole, over at Boost. So we're very grateful to Nicole for that connection.
Huge shout out to Nicole. Literally one of my favorite founders I've met. Fantastic human.
Yeah, so one of the most amazing connectors and just like a ball of energy and just a really, really lovely human. So grateful to have her in our network. Let's jump in. So RJ, first things first, like tell our audience like who you are, tell us about HomeRoom, what it does, how you do it, give them a sort of high level synopsis.
Yeah, sure. So again, I'm Arjay Ruggles. I'm the CEO and founder of HomeRoom. It's actually my second startup. We are a community technology solutions company. So what we do is we work with businesses, creators, and DAOs in order to build communities for their customers and for their employees. Big reason for that is just we're huge believers in community as a driver of growth. And I'm sure we'll talk about this later in my opinions on the ad model and how detrimental that's been for technology and people as a whole. And so as a result, we believe that community is the future of business. We have our own community management software. In fact, the first community management software for Discord called Harmony. And then we also do enterprise community management solutions for businesses who are looking to improve their internal tech stacks for their company or to build communities for their customers or add community features to their products and services.
Appreciate the little bit of controversy and tension you're introducing into the podcast with taking a shot at the ad-driven model. So it's gonna keep our audience listening. Yeah, let's do it. Let's dig in there. I think you should know too about us is that we sort of have an interesting setup here where like I loosely tend to handle like the content side of things and overall agency operations, and Will tends to handle more of like the paid social performance management ad side. So just know who you're taking shots at. That's all.
I hate what I do, but it pays.
You got to make a living, dude. You gotta eat.
My first bit of advice to all of our clients would be, don't use this platform. It's evil. But if you're gonna, here's how to do it.
That's the pitch. That's the elevator pitch.
And it works, surprisingly. So here we are.
I don't think children should have matches or fuel, but if you're going to start a bonfire, let's create a really cool bonfire.
You must be a lot of fun at Burning Man.
The best advice from a Boy Scout troop leader. As we do with In Tech Can't Save Us, at the beginning, let's jump into the headlines. We've selected, or I should say Shakir, our incredible digital marketing intern, has selected some amazing headlines for us to discuss here. And the first one was from HubSpot, about the community-led growth model at HubSpot. Community-led growth is your thing. So just curious about your perspective about this piece. I thought one of the interesting things about this piece was the focus on customer success managers. I have some friends who've transitioned into that role. I think it's a really interesting role. And they kind of talk about that individual as being, a person who has a lot of customer insights, obviously in their head from, the nature of their role. So super curious to hear your reaction to the community-led growth strategy that HubSpot employed. Before
I get started, I would definitely recommend anyone who's curious to learn more about the way that HubSpot approaches community. Evan Hamilton, the director of community, shares tons of really useful insights on Twitter. It's just Evan Hamilton, this handle. Definitely recommend checking him out. This article in particular I thought was really interesting because kind of jumping off what you said, I want to talk a little bit about the customer success thing. I'm so happy that they positioned this right. I think a lot of companies make the mistake of expecting their customer success managers to just run the community and to know what to do, which isn't how it works. But they are the right kind of people to understand like what these community members need and like a good starting place if you don't know what you're doing. So I like that they kind of like understood that nuance. I think really what it really makes it really cool is that HubSpot, I think, is just such a great example of doing community well. They're primarily B2B SaaS company, right? Like it's easy to just write off community for B2B SaaS as like a non-starter or just not worth it. But they really show that it is, that people want to understand the product. They want to use it right. They want to do it in the right ways, and that their academy and all of their other community initiatives are a way to increase adoption while also spreading brand awareness. It honestly is a chef's kiss on how to do community well.
Yeah, I think when it comes to kind of products, you essentially have two plays available to you. One of which is very unlikely that you are in, which is you either create something that is so utterly better than anything else on the market that people just use you and you win. It's like, I've solved a problem that no one else has solved before. Everyone ends up with me. The alternative, which is where most people are, is you either do the same thing as a lot of other people or you do something very similar. And the only way you can really differentiate yourself in that space is with a really active community. And when you look at almost any of the real disruptors, especially in the tech space, they often have maybe we've got one or two things that are genuinely innovative, but the thing that we really have is community. It's Notion. Nothing Notion does is new. It's packaged it very well. It's really useful. It's got some great shortcuts in it, but you're going up against Google Docs and Microsoft Word. How the hell you carve a niche in that space is a testament to just what community-led growth can do. So yeah, I think HubSpot are a great best-in-class example, and so a Notion for like how you can do this from building it into your product from day one, and then some other cool kind of marketing and content stuff you can do once you're off the ground and running.
And also, just kind of bouncing off, I'm so happy to use the Notion example. We're diehard Notion fangirls at our company and have been for a very long time. And I think it's such an interesting case study because when you compare what they did in terms of their approach to community, it was so different from HubSpot, right? Like there is no Discord server for Notion. There is no Slack community for Notion, right? But they're everywhere. Like their ambassadors are their community. They're all over Twitter. They have their own merch, their pop-up in San Francisco, which I happen to be out of town for. And I was so upset. But there's no like central place for Notion's community. They're just everywhere, which is kind of genius when you think about it, because it's like no matter where you go, you're seeing them. Whereas HubSpot, took a little bit of a different approach and they actually brought everyone together. But both of those approaches are valid, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, sort of, I think is a good segue to our next piece where we talk about product adoption as it relates to SaaS businesses. And I think the intersection here about the community-led growth piece is to what extent we think that community-led growth can foster product adoption. And the sort of backdrop for this piece was about, winter is coming, the recession's here. At least in the UK, like the pound is absolutely tanking as we speak, and like winter has already arrived. So I think a lot of like SaaS leaders are thinking about how do we get people into strong, tight-knit communities that are going to lead to product adoption and growth for these SaaS companies. So Arjay, really curious to hear your reaction to this piece.
So there's a couple things about this piece I loved is because the title is actually like how product adoption creates recession-proof SaaS businesses, which honestly is like perfectly timed, obviously. And what I think is so important to understand is that like, if you're able to make people understand where the value proposition for your product lies and to make it so essential that they don't want to get rid of it, it doesn't matter how much money they're losing, they're not going to drop you, right? Because they know that if they do, that's more detrimental to their success than if they just kept you. And so it's really interesting because I think the thing that a lot of SaaS businesses miss, which I think this article did a good job of talking about, is educating people on your product, right? Like teach people how to use it. You can't just throw them into an onboarding sequence for 3 minutes and then expect them to just be off to the races. Sometimes that works. Loom is a great example. Loom, you get it within minutes of using it. You don't really need to go through an academy to understand how to use Loom. But for something like a Notion or a Riverside FM, for example, you might need a little bit more handholding to get you where you need to go. And once you've adopted it, you've integrated into your work processes, you could be losing millions of dollars a month, but you're not going to drop it because you know that it does what it needs to for you and your business. And there's no reason to get rid of it.
I always feel trite giving this opinion because it's like, well, all right, thanks, mate. Obviously, if you haven't built a product that solves a clear problem and makes your users' life easier, and you haven't clearly and concisely educated them on that, you have bigger problems than a recession. Like, your model's never going to scale regardless. And actually, in terms of making your product recession proof, it starts from day one. Whether you're in a peak or a trough with regards to the economy, you have to create something that's so useful and so user centric that, like you said, it makes people's lives easier. So when you downsize your department from 10 to 5, and there's even more stress on those 5 employees that are left after the recession cuts to your workforce, there's no way I'm getting rid of Notion. Like Notion's where our entire company wiki's built. We literally couldn't get rid of it if we tried. We'd have to start from it's that kind of fundamental integration with the team that, like you said, they don't even question it.
And also the team loving it too. Because how many times have we worked somewhere where a boss loves something, but everyone else absolutely hates it, right? We've all been there. And so like when your team is bought in too, that only makes it even more sticky.
I want to move us to the next piece, which talks about, this trend in the tech sector of them, sort of like move fast and break things, and super curious, Arjay, to hear your opinion about, I can hear the audible sigh is coming out already.
All 3 of us are going to have so much like vitriol.
I'm going to try to keep my opinions concise. And for anyone who wants to see how I truly feel about this topic, just look me up on TikTok. It's Life with RJ, ARJAY. This is why my TikTok blew up. I am a firm believer that this philosophy and this policy is what will be the downfall of not just software, but America, period. You can only break things so much before they can no longer be repaired. And the reality is that originally this idea was adopted because, we got to build fast. We got to try various things. We have to see what works and see what doesn't. But the problem with that approach is that you remove the human element, right? Facebook's whole philosophy early was, work fast and break things. Okay, well, now you're breaking democracies. Now you're breaking people's health. Now you are breaking families. And so we got to turn around and go, wait a minute, it's possible to build and to create things without tearing apart these frameworks that allow us to be sustainable and have healthy and, happy lives. And there's a lot deeper I could go there, but that's kind of the high level.
That was sort of like the positive side of the question I was trying to pose was sort of like, do you think community-led growth can get ahead of that so that people are building with like real-time community needs and wants in mind so that they don't do all the things you just said?
I do. In fact, at HomeRoom, it actually was really interesting. We'll use the word user earlier. We don't use that word at HomeRoom. We have a philosophy which we call a human-centric approach to software. So in place of the word user, we use the word person. When we're talking about user experience, we use the term HX, human experience, human interface design, not user interface design. And it sounds like a small approach, but I talked about this when I did the podcast with the CEO of Meetup, David, about the importance of language within business. When you change user to person and user to human, it reminds you that this is an individual who has their own thoughts, motives, opinions, and idiosyncrasies who's interacting with this product, not some weird gray bust figure who's just typing away at a computer, right? And so that simple nuance completely changes your framework in the way that you think about the approach and makes you understand that you're building something that people are going to interact with. It's going to be part of their everyday lives. It's going to affect the way that they do work, play, or whatever in some kind of way. So you want to take that seriously, right? Like you don't want to build something that harms them. You don't want to build something that's difficult for them. You want to build something that they enjoy, they like, that feels pleasing, and that ultimately doesn't disrupt their lives, but enriches it.
I love that. That's a way better approach. And language is important. It really is. And it's incredible how much you can set the tone for your team just through those little things that some angry corners of the internet get very annoyed about. But it's like, no, this really does make a difference. And I love that. I love that approach.
Yeah, I literally was just looking at a content calendar, editorial calendar for one of our new clients, and we had users in there, and I just messaged our content strategist. I was like, can we actually change that to humans? Because particularly what we're talking about is the client works in the adult content creation space. So if ever there was a place to be talking about humans and humanizing what's happening in that space, and it's a really important one. And I remember when I first opened the sheet earlier today, actually before the podcast, I saw user and I actually paused for a second, and I was like, and I kind of just let it go because default culture, inertia, whatever, socialization. But thank you for that reminder, Arjay. It's powerful.
Before we move on, I would just love to jump in with some vitriol against the general tech and ad agency world. I just need to have my little 30 seconds of therapy and then we can go back onto the regular programming. I think community-led growth and products are a huge driver in this. I think if you truly do it well from day one, it's very hard to build something evil or accidentally evil, whether you intended or not. The other thing, just generally as a society, and to anyone listening to the podcast, continue shaming people that do work at companies that actively make the world a worse place and don't care. You cannot step back from Facebook and go, I just work there anymore. You work at a cigarette company. Like you work at a big pharma company at scale. Put as much pressure as you can on those companies to stop being dicks and getting away with this argument of, oh, well, we just create a platform. And if it happens to destroy democracy, that's not our problem. No, absolutely not. That's not okay. You can't be like, oh, I didn't realize that I was just hitting everyone with my car. I was just driving. Like, that's not how society works.
I've had a few awkward interactions where I talk about HomeRoom's true mission is to overtake Meta. I truly believe that we can be the Google and the Facebook of Web3. And I like to say Web 2.5 because I'm not a huge Web3 person and that's a whole nother discussion. But I'm serious when I say it. And, I have colleagues and friends who I meet and they have their wives or their husbands work at Meta and they look at me weird and they it's been awkward. And I am adjusting my language so I sound a lot less aggressive because I don't want to come off as a dick to anyone. But I also am not going to apologize for it. Because it's the same way I look at people who go into the police force. It's like you're choosing to go into an institution that is causing harm. So therefore, you are choosing to uphold that system that is causing harm. And it's even worse, in my opinion, with Meta, because it's like the majority of people working there can choose to work somewhere else. This is not a matter of my only job option is to work at Meta. No, if you're a software engineer, you have a smorgasbord of places to work. If you're a marketer, you have plenty of places to go. You do not have to work at Meta. So that argument falls flat. That's why I'm yes, I respect that you or someone you care about works at this place, but ultimately, like, they're choosing to work in an environment that is harmful to our society. And I'm not going to apologize for being upset about that, you know?
You've segued us perfectly into, our first question for you, which was, you've set a bold mission for HomeRoom, like overtaking Meta. I think the whole Web 2.5 thing is super interesting. It's not something I've heard, but I think something we've probably talked about without realizing we're talking about it. So yeah, would love to just hear your inspiration for starting HomeRoom, where you got the idea, and just like sort of the initial bits of your journey so far.
I was originally a sex worker and a makeup artist before I became a startup founder. And my first startup, we built a Discord server that was specifically aimed to provide a safe space for those in the adult industry. Because actually, today's a great example. Pornhub's Instagram got deleted this morning. They had a statement about it over on Twitter. So this is something that's happened to so many people of mine who are in that space. And so I wanted to create a space that was private, more secure, they could come together. And what was so beautiful is we created this Discord server. We worked with this company called Ternary. They're a startup based in Miami. So there was like a gate. You had to like go through like a verification system to get added. And it was actually really beautiful. We found that people were willing to show their face, like doctors and like teachers, like people who are in this space who usually would have to be incredibly protective of their identity, felt safe and comfortable sharing what they do and then going on vacation and all this various stuff because they were in a space and a community of like-minded peers. And so me being a business owner, I'm like, all right, let me evaluate the success of this thing, right? Where are my metrics? Where are my tools? And Discord's native insights are a joke. You have to have a minimum of 500 people in your community to even unlock them. And then once you do, they're on a 1 to 2 month delay, which makes no sense. And so we were like, well, there has to be something better. And by that point, I've been doing community building for a few VCs and I've been working for a few founder communities. And so I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And so that was kind of what made us realize that there was an opportunity here. And so incorporated the company. It's actually been exactly 1 year today.
Congrats. That's amazing.
Oh my God, I just noticed the date. Yeah, it's exactly 1 year today. We incorporated HomeRoom.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Oh my, I'm like actually kind of like, oh my God, I didn't realize. But yeah, a year ago today, we incorporated the company. We started iterating and building. We raised a pre-seed of $760K in January. It took us less than 3 weeks, which is insane. And then now we've just been building. We launched our software last month. We're about to start fundraising for our seed starting in 2 days, actually. But yeah, that was kind of the inspiration. And then we started and now we're kind of in the space where we've kind of cemented ourselves in the community industry. People know us, they're familiar with us, and really believe in the mission that we have, which is to truly create a internet that is more safe, more inclusive, and more welcoming of all people, that does not tolerate misinformation and harmful rhetoric, and that is focused on creating ethical, sustainable, and privacy-focused communities for businesses and creators.
Ties back to our kind of conversation from earlier, but one of the things that does give me hope for the kind of future of tech and the tech space is there does seem to be a growing movement with awesome entrepreneurs like yourself against big tech and like, okay, well, why don't we just do Facebook that isn't evil? Because it's not actually that hard to replicate its images and text. And, why don't we not sell anyone's data? And HomeRoom is a brilliant one. Discord is not actually that easy to use or that well designed. There's such a gap in the market there. And obviously they do a lot of the other stuff big tech does. But I think there's quite a few cool up and coming brands that give me hope that maybe we're moving away from the sort of era of those big players in the space.
I fully agree with you. I think what's really been beautiful to watch for me specifically is like, I'm 30. I just turned 30 this year. So I'm officially at gay death age. So I had to turn in my card and everything. It was a really, really painful day for me. Kidding.
Who do you turn it into?
A 29-year-old who holds it for 1 year.
I love you guys. It's so weird. Like I'm in this weird space where I'm like too young to be a millennial sometimes, but too old to be a Gen Z. But it's kind of beautiful because like all the founders who are in like the same kind of age group / like building group that I'm in, we all kind of have a really shared vision and ideal about the way that we want to build our companies and the way that we want to build for our customers, and trying to not make the same mistakes that we did in Web 1 and Web 2, which is why I love the term Web 2.5, kind of come bring it back, Paul, is because Web 3 has a lot of problems right now, right? Like it's Ponzi scheme central. It's insane. And I think there's like 99.9% of bullshit happening in Web 3, but there's like that 0.1% that's doing some really, really incredible stuff. But there's also still tons of work left to be done in Web 2, right? Like we're not done there. And so that's why I like to say that HomeRoom is a Web 2.5 company, because In my opinion, there needs to be a bridge between those two. And additionally, there needs to be a infrastructure layer that allows for this growth to happen from the ethos of Web 2 to the ethos that people try to sell with Web 3. And there's a lot of companies that are kind of taking that approach.
I think you're highlighting too, like a really interesting moment that we're in. I think that's what makes the 2.5, number so fascinating is just like, it just feels like we're in a moment where folks who have been, who are in groups who have been underestimated and discriminated against, and, like they are harnessing the power of venture capital and tech and different models for running companies and things like that. And they're taking, these big tech firms to task, and they're challenging these dominant paradigms and stuff like that. And it's just, as an agency that works with a lot of these companies, it's just fascinating to like see it happen, to like hop on for, parts of the ride and stuff like that, and to support it, from, a certain vantage point. So thank you for reminding us that like we're in a moment, and like it's hard to kind of see it because we're in the middle of it, but it's a cool spot to be in, I think.
It's interesting you say that. It's so hard to see it when you're in it. Prior to me finding HomeRoom, I was doing community building for an incredible solo VC, Lolita Taub. Definitely my personal mentor is how I would say it. And I started working for her in June of 2021, and I had no network, like no connections. And she put out this tweet. She's like, hey, I need help managing my community. And I was like, well, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And so I put in my app and I sent a Loom video. And I said in that video, I was like talking about the reasons why I thought it was good. And I said, you will never find someone who will work harder for you. I might not know everything, but if you ask me a question, I will not stop until I find the answer. And she gave me a shot. That was my first real entry into venture capital, the whole VC and startup industry. And it was both beautiful and terrifying and exciting and saddening all at the same time, right? Because I'm seeing all this growth and all these opportunities, all these incredible ideas bouncing around. But then, especially as a non-binary queer Black man, I'm also seeing all of the inequity, all the people come up with these incredible ideas, but instead it's going to white dudes who are writing an idea on a napkin, seeing that less than 2% of all VC funding had gone to women for the past decade, that we gave less than 1.8% to Black founders in 2020, and then that dropped to 1.3 in 2021. And we don't even know the numbers for queer founders. We don't track it. We don't even know. That was just really eye-opening. And I was like, wow, there is so many problems here. How do I make a name for myself in this? And I'm very laser focused. And so we raised our pre-seed. A few months later, I'm building and I'm talking to friends, and I went to a mixer with some founder friends of mine. We're all talking about when most of us are seed stage. So we're all talking about what we're doing, and everybody's talking about how long it took them to raise. And I'm actually confused because I was like, what do you mean it took you 6 months? What do you mean you've been raising for a year? What are you talking about? And they're like, well, how long did it take you? I was like, 3 weeks. And the whole room went silent. I'm thinking I messed up or did something wrong. And they're like, are you serious? And that was my moment where I realized I wasn't normal. And so I was in it, right? I just was in it. I was doing my thing, focusing on the thing. And I wasn't aware that what I was doing and how I was doing it and the speed at which we were doing it was completely against the norm. And I think that's a perfect way to highlight this Web 2.5 moment is we all look at it as necessary. We don't see any other way to be building a company or be doing things because this feels right. But we're so in it that we don't really think and recognize how different and how wildly out of the norm our approach is until we step out of that space and are reminded of it.
Yeah, we've spoken on the pod a few times. I think one of the other things that's very much due a revolution is just VC funding. It's broken. Everyone agrees it's broken. Someone is eventually going to fix it for the problems of inequality that you mentioned, but also I just fundamentally think it's something that was invented in the 1900s and hasn't really changed in 100 years, and that just can't stick around. But I mean, that's such an incredible journey, and I'd love to hear some. As we found out, you're a year old today. What are some of the success stories you can share from the communities you have built on HomeRoom? What are some of your favorite folk that have used it and stuff that they've built on the platform?
I still can't believe this. Our very first customer was AngelList. Still to this day shocks me. But we incorporated our AngelList stack, which is a product for incorporating a company, has equity, cap table management. Anyone who wants to incorporate a C Corp, use AngelList stack. I'm telling you right now. You'll thank yourself later. But we incorporated. And then a week later, we had our lead form and it's Samook, AngelList. And I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking it's a joke, right? There's no way this is serious. And behold, we hop on the meeting and it was them. And we talked and we ended up building a small community for their founders and really helping them understand how it can be used. And we ended up building all the infrastructure. So it's there and it went really, really well. Now they're taking their time to build the product. So that way, when it's ready, they have the community to activate the moment they need it. And it was just so much fun because their team is, for as big a company as they are, their team is actually really small. I think they just passed 200 employees. It was really amazing because we're meeting with them, we're talking with them, and they're just so excited to make life better for founders. There's just been such this huge focus on investors for such a long time that it was so beautiful to see the absolute dedication that their team has. And so I do want to give a quick shout out to Tamar, Amberly, and Dave over on the product team at Angela Stack, because they really care and they want the best for their founders. And that was just so beautiful. And I would say the other one is, I don't know if you guys read the Generalist newsletter with Mario Ariel. So they launched an NFT community called Philosophical Foxes, and we built this Discord server, and they actually use our Harmony software now to manage it. And it's so cool because Mario is probably one of the most innovative and creative writers I've ever met. And his idea of basically taking an NFT project and turning it into performance art, it can eventually become its own narrative and essentially novel, is so cool. It's so cool. So yeah, that was a lot of fun to work on. And that one was probably the most challenging because we had a lot of stuff we had to build on top of Discord to make it work. And now it does. And so that kind of was actually a really big part of what allowed us to build Harmony as a software.
That's really cool. Speaking of the software itself, I'm super curious to hear about your and your team's favorite features of the product. What are the highlights that y'all really enjoy?
This is so hard. It's a tie. The two features I think are my favorite. One, we pre-built a number of templates, and we're actually adding about 14 more over the next 2 weeks based on the CMX Spaces model. And so when you join Harmony, we basically ask you, are you building a new community? If you say yes, you tell us the type. Are you building a content community, an advocacy community? For influencers? Are you building one for streaming, for Web3? Is it one for your customers? Is it one for support? Whatever it is. And then we provide a number of templates that allow you to click and your entire Discord server is built for you. All the channels, roles, categories, and permissions are completely pre-configured. Takes less than 2 seconds. So that's one of my favorite features. The other, though, I think is the contributor metric. So you can actually see who the top 100 most engaged users are, both in text channels and in voice channels. So you can see from day to day, from hour to hour, month to month, week to week, who in your community is actually participating, is engaged, and to be able to make decisions based on that. So, and those are two that our users are just absolutely obsessed with. Persons.
It's so hard.
See, I slipped up.
It's hard.
The amount of times I'm on a call and I just hear myself speaking in 3-letter acronyms and industry speak and just think, I'm such an asshole. I feel like it's that Star Wars meme where it's like, you were supposed to bring balance to the Force, not join it. Like that level of just, I've become everything I set out to end in the tech industry. Sorry, that little insight into my existential angst there. Apologies for everyone. You've talked about your incredible journey into starting HomeRoom. It was so cool. I'm just interested to hear, because this is a question we ask a lot on our podcast. And, I think in the side of being an entrepreneur that's glamorized of hey, it's nothing but success. And, I wake up and I live for it. There are some people like that, but they're normally sociopaths. It's a very hard and stressful thing to do. And I'd just love to know, from your journey, how you've balanced everything in your life and, kept a good work-life balance along with driving so much cool success.
I was horrible at it for a very long time. I'm just going to say it. I was a complete and utter workaholic, and I was killing myself. I was working 80 hours a week. It just felt like I just had to, because otherwise it all will fall apart overnight. I know you guys, I guess I'm showing the podcast. So I'm polyamorous. I'm married. I have 2 partners. One of my partners has been married for 20 years, and his husband has 2 partners. We're about as queer can get. And so I am a CEO of one company. I still run my first startup, Playtime, and I'm married and have 2 partners all at the same time. That is about as insane as it sounds. And imagine me being a workaholic in the middle of all that. Yeah. What really helped was, so my birthday is April 1st. I'm an April Fool's baby. I have not taken a vacation in over 2.5 years. My partners were like, we are going to Lake Tahoe. We're renting a cabin. It's going to be our whole polycule, but you cannot work. We're taking your phone. You're off the grid. And I'm obviously, understandably, losing my mind. My executive assistant is the only person who would be able to get in contact with me, and it would be going to my husband, not to me directly. PJ, our community ops manager, who's absolutely incredible, was like, RJ, you're going on the vacation. If I see you on Threads, if I see you on Discord, if I see you on Notion, I'm going to come down there. I'm going to hurt you. you were going on this vacation. So I go. I remember we were on a sunset cruise going through Emerald Bay, and I'm just looking at nature. I just started crying because I realized that I had been so focused on everything that I wanted for the future that I was missing everything that was right in front of me. And so what I tell people all the time is that to build a successful business, you have to rest. You need moments of boredom in order to have moments of inspiration, because it's when you're bored that your brain is able to become elastic. It's able to think. It's able to rest. And that's when you actually end up having some of your best ideas. If you're a founder or anyone in business or, looking to be in the space, use Google Calendar, block your time, recognize that it is a marathon, not a sprint, and that everything will not die tomorrow. And also be honest with yourself about your capabilities. Don't set yourself up for failure, giving yourself a million tasks to do and then feeling bad that you didn't get them done. Instead, wake up each day and say, this is the thing that I need to get done today, or at least I need to make progress on. And if you did that thing, it's a good day. Even if you didn't get all the other stuff that you wanted to do, if you got that one thing done or sent that one email or completed that one project, that is a good day. Measure it by those steps, not by the overall vision. If you focus so much on the big picture, you're going to get bogged down and feel like a weight on top of you. Break it into smaller chunks and take it day by day. And remember to give yourself time to rest because you need it.
Kudos to you. I mean, first of all, for your candor and just sharing all that, because I think other people will listen to this and really internalize that, hopefully, and maybe, take that vacation that they were delaying or just rethink about how they structure their own time and maybe never get to that point that you got to. So that vulnerability is really powerful.
I hope so. I remember listening to the podcast that Alexis, the comedian, does, where she interviews tech creators, but not about their job. I cannot remember the name of it right now, but she did one with the creator of NASA Academy. And I remember listening to it, and there were so many things that I was like, yeah, that's me. And then she got to the point where she was like, so is there any part of your life that's not about work? And he's like, no, it's my dream for everything I do is related to my work. And I heard that and I was like, oh God, this is terrifying. That's me. I do not want to be that.
I've definitely seen that guy, and I've had the same. I'm worried about you, dude. Are you okay?
Right. So yeah, I just trying to balance. It's all about balance. It's hard. It's really, really, really hard. But if you work at it, you'll do it. And some days you'll be better than others, but it takes intention.
And also kudos for you're a solo founder. I'm assuming is it for both companies?
Yeah, both companies. Solo founder.
We literally just talking about this today with Will. He allowed me to take some time.
Hopefully we meet in person one day, Arjay, and I can just give you a hug and just I'm so sorry. The one piece of advice I'd give to anyone is get a co-founder, because Jesus, it helps so much.
It's so funny because everyone asks me that, and I'm not technical, right? I'm not a developer, I'm a no-code engineer, and everyone says the same thing. They're like, how do you not have a co-founder? And I tell everyone, I said, it's because I'd be terrible with a co-founder. I'd be really terrible. This is one of my traits, which is not a good trait, and it's something I just recognize as a weakness of mine. It's I'm an absolute control freak, and I have a very, very specific vision of the product, of the company, and the way that I want to build, and also the managerial style that I approach. I create the kind of culture I want to cultivate for my employees, and having a co-founder would interrupt a lot of that. My best example I like to give is my first hire was an HR manager. It was not a developer. It was not a ops manager. It was not a customer success person. And every single person I've told that to says, that was a mistake. And I tell them all the time, I say, why? I'm building a company. I'm building a company of people. And I don't know anything about HR. I know nothing about onboarding. I know nothing about employee handbooks. You expect me to hire and scale to hundreds of employees without an HR manager? No, absolutely not.
I think it makes a ton of sense because I feel like that's probably been our biggest pain point. We're, 8 full-time employees deep and a few, a handful of freelancers and things like that. And that's been the one where it's man, we really could use this role in this individual. And it's been our biggest, learning area and growth area, I think, in so many ways. So
between the two companies, I have 11 employees. I haven't had to think a single day about onboarding. I haven't had to think a single day about payroll. I haven't had to think a single day about compliance. He takes care of all of it. We have a 40-page employee handbook. We have a 30-day of what people's first 30 days will look like at the company. We have a professional development system. We start our performance evaluations in about 3 weeks. It's all done. I have a fully functioning human resources, basically department, and we're a seed stage company.
Do they work between the two companies or just one in each?
Yeah, he also does both.
Yeah, I think there's also lots of opportunities out there. I think HR tech has been one of our biggest sectors that we've seen in tech for good and in terms of our clientele. And also there's so many opportunities to get creative and flexible and modular with it these days. Super smart of you to take that route. And also just say like, that's something you don't want to do and maybe aren't good at. So you're just going to plan for that. And that's, like all these articles about like, this should be your first hire, that should be your second hire. Like it's got to vary so much from company to company, founder to founder, sort of context to context. Yeah, good shout on that one. Want to move us into the lightning round here, where we ask you sort of slightly cheeky, interesting questions to get to know you a bit better, though you've already revealed so much about yourself. So I don't know if we can dig any deeper than we've already gone.
I talk a lot. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fantastic. Honestly, it's really lovely. One we like to just ask about is just getting into the tech of it. So super curious about like what's been a game-changing tech product in your life.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so it's a tie. It's a tie between Notion and Deal. So Deal, for those who've never heard of it before, is a global payroll and HR platform. You're able to be an employer on record across like 60 different countries and everything. I have a team across 11 time zones. I haven't had to blink a single eye. Deal is incredible. The founder, Alex, is amazing. I remember we were getting set up. Mind you, we're like 4 employees at this point. This dude is running I think they're like 150 million ARR at this point. Like it's insane. He's DMing me on Twitter, like getting me set up and helping me do it. Like, dude, you have so many more important things to worry about than this. Like, why are you DMing me? Thank you.
It's either like a good sign or a really bad sign.
Yeah, no, really amazing sign. Like to be that far along and still be this dedicated to the experience for your customers is insane. And like, I hope to be that kind of a CEO. So Deal is one. And then the other, I got to give it to Notion. I mean, it's just such an amazing product. It does so much. I find myself now, like everyone's like, are you going to get a CRM? Are you going to get a CRM? And I'm like, why would I have Notion? I look at all these tools. I look at Salesforce. I look at HubSpot. I'm like, what can these do that I can't build with Notion, Zapier, and Make? Some no code. Like I can't justify it. So yeah, definitely those two.
Love that. Next question in the lightning round. What's one problem tech can't solve for and why?
Toxic workplace environments. That is something that is a responsibility of managers, not the workers, and not something that technology can solve. It's a human problem, so it requires human solutions.
Really well said. I think that's something that we've tried to think about a lot, especially like starting a company in the pandemic, having it be remote / hybrid and like really trying to create, feels like there's less of a playbook for, creating healthy work environments in that context. So we're kind of building it as we go. Like we all are globally, but also in our individual companies. So I'm sure we could talk ages about that. And it sounds like you're doing a really interesting job with it, with how you've hired and structured your company. So next question, lightning round, the tech for bad question. So what's the evilest application of tech that you've seen out there and why?
I mean, you guys are probably going to guess what my answer to this would be. It's Facebook. We've been sold a lie that social media and Facebook is a platform for connecting people. That's one of the biggest bold-faced lies ever told. Facebook and social media is a tool. You can choose to use that tool in order to connect with friends, or you can use it as a tool to try to overthrow a democracy like the United States. And fortunately, it is a tool that is best used by those who have wide personalities or a sociopath or are good at manipulation. So I would say Facebook.
We had a running joke for a while that Facebook was the only correct answer to that question, and you nailed it, obviously. So that's thank you for bringing us back to our roots as a podcast here. Appreciate that.
I love this podcast.
We should have like a running stat for the podcast of the percentage of answers of people that say Meta versus something else.
Do more of the video ones. You need to have like a little tick counter like right above the head.
Yeah. I think it is about 50% of people. I've had some other interesting ones. One person once was just like basically lawyers. Like that was
great answer.
Love that.
I was like, oh, I respect that old school answer.
Not the correct answer, but the best answer.
But the best answer, yeah.
Obviously, you've already dreamed up a couple of awesome tech products. If you could dream up another for a different problem, what would it solve and for whom?
This is something I actually, so I'm an angel investor and I have a few startups that I've invested in and also advise. It would actually be in creating a AR layer on our digital layer on the world. I'm a firm believer that the future of technology lies in AR, not VR, specifically AR. And as a person who's in long-distance relationships, like being able to have my partner sit on the couch next to me and watch a movie with me would be amazing. So that would be something I would love to invest time in.
It's such a nice like foil too, I think, for like the fake or shallow connections that I think a lot of social media companies have given us. And to say, hey, we can use augmented reality to like help me strengthen my relationships, I think is such a powerful sort of foil for that stuff.
As much as I hate on Meta, I will say the one thing that I have liked and it's made the distance between me and my partners easier. I'm in the Bay. They're in Columbus, Ohio. So literally across the country. Each week we'll get in VR and either play video games together or we'll go in VR chat and like explore worlds together. We're soon going to get haptic feedback suits. So like when I go to like touch him, it'll feel like I'm touching him. And that's something that I'm very, very thankful for. It's been a saving grace for our relationship.
Curious to hear. So you're already like pushing us into the future. So I'm going to ask you a question about the future. Yeah, I would love to just get your sense of some predictions in the tech for good space, and specifically as it relates to community-led growth. What do you think community-led growth is going to unlock in the tech for good space, and just anything you see coming down the pike?
I think we're going to see a lot more people who are deeply invested in the companies that they love, both financially and socially. I also think that the community-led growth is going to create a new growth of the private internet. I think what happened, the biggest change we noticed in Web 2 was we went from all these private chat rooms and message boards and BBC boards and all this other stuff to social media where everything's broadcast publicly. But we're starting to see the downside of that. And so I think we're going to see a return to these private spaces where people are able to feel more safe and more welcome and more themselves and more able to be themselves, which I think is going to be a net positive for the world.
100%. Last question. You've already at 30 had an incredible career, but what's kind of worked well for you in terms of building a career that balances purpose with profit?
Ooh, this is a really good finishing question. I think what it is me understanding what brings me actual joy and also understanding that there's only so far you can go with physical uses for wealth. Me and my partner, should things go well, I'll be a multimillionaire within the next 2 years, right? And we've talked a lot about like, do we want to buy a big house and all this other stuff? But like, to me, that's more house to clean. That's more responsibility to deal with. Ultimately, I want a nice place filled with nice things. Not a big place filled with emptiness. And so what I've done is really double down on having experiences and a life that brings me joy, not things that make me feel like I'm winning.
Thanks for saying that. It's so easy to be pulled, I think, into the inertia of like what the Joneses are doing and like what everyone around you is doing. And sort of, even this idea of like, what do they call it? The housing ladder, you know what I mean? Like, and kind of that whole thing. But you're seeing a bit of a sea change where people are starting to turn more towards those experiences and think about them more. So thank you for sharing that, RJ.
There is a quote that I wrote in our investor memo that like perfectly describes what you just talked about. And basically, it's kind of the reason why I'm such a big believer in community-led growth. At the end of the day, what we've seen is that people don't want a desire for fancy things anymore. They're driven by a desire for great experiences. And the quote I'll read it to you. I really like this line. I was proud of it. I said, "That is why an advertisement for a cute swimsuit may get a few sales, but a TikTok featuring a beach trip will sell out a collection. It's because people want and desire to have beautiful experiences that are memorable that they can then share with other people." And I feel like the way to lead a fulfilling life is to build a life that is full of experiences that allow you to feel like you've gotten to experience everything that your life had to offer.
I think that's a great note to end on. RJ, CEO and founder of HomeRoom. This has been a fantastic conversation. I think I maybe speak for the both of us when I say it's probably one of my favorite episodes, if not my favorite episode of the podcast.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it all just comes down to the guests and what they're willing to reveal and share about themselves and their experiences. And clearly you've had some amazing ones, and we just thank you for sharing them with us. So thank you, RJ.
No, thank you. Seriously, this has been such a joy and such an honor. And honestly, I wish both of you nothing but the best. You guys are doing amazing work, and I've listened to a bunch of episodes already. I love it. Definitely added to my favorite podcast list. And so thank you so much for having me. It's been a highlight of the week. And
real quick, where can folks find you and HomeRoom on the interwebs?
Great. Well, if you want to check out HomeRoom, it is homeroom.club, CLUB. One day I'll get that .com, I promise, but .club for now. And then I am Life with RJ, ARJAY, on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. So feel free to check me out.
Awesome. Well, we're so grateful for your time, RJ. Really appreciate you making it for us. And let's continue to follow each other's career trajectory and support each other. We'll be rooting for you along the way with HomeRoom and everything else you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.